Commander Vexai floated in his captain's chair aboard the Federation cruiser Harmony's Edge, his blue tentacles moving slowly through the warm water that filled the bridge. For 300 years, his people had served the Galactic Federation. Keeping peace among the stars? It was easy work. Most species were gentle like his own people, preferring to talk rather than fight. Today felt different. His ship moved through empty space near the outer edge of known territory. This area was supposed to be safe, far from any dangerous worlds or hostile species. The Federation had mapped every system here decades ago. Nothing lived in this sector except some plants and simple animals. "Sir," called his sensor officer, her voice tight with worry. "I'm reading something strange." Vexai turned his large black eyes toward her station. Officer Nimra was young but smart. She rarely made mistakes. "What do you see?" "Ships, sir. Lots of them. They just appeared out of nowhere." The main screen lit up with images that made Vexai's tentacles curl with fear. 47 massive ships hung in space like sleeping monsters. They were dark gray, covered in thick armor plates, and strange bumps that could only be weapons. These ships looked nothing like the smooth white vessels of the Federation. They looked built for war. "Where did they come from?" Vexai whispered. "Unknown." "Sir, they use some kind of faster-than-light travel we've never seen before. The energy readings are off our charts." Vexai had been in space for over 2 centuries. He had seen ships from every known species in the galaxy. These were different. These were scary. "Sir, we're getting a message," reported the communications officer. "Put it through." A face appeared on the screen that made every creature on the bridge freeze in terror. It was a human face, though none of them knew that word yet. The being had pale skin stretched tight over hard bones, small eyes that seemed to see everything, and a mouth full of white teeth. Most frightening of all, its face showed no emotion. Federation species always showed their feelings through color changes, fin movements, or tentacle positions. This creature's face was like stone. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force," the being said in a voice like grinding metal. "We come seeking those who took our people. Stand down or face the consequences." The message ended, leaving the bridge in shocked silence. Vexai had never heard such words in a first contact situation. Where were the peaceful greetings? Offers of friendship? A careful diplomatic language that had kept the galaxy calm for thousands of years? "Sir, what's Earth?" asked Nimra. Vexai didn't know. He had never heard of any world called Earth, or any species called humans. Something about that face on the screen filled him with a fear he had never felt before. "Send word to Federation Command," he ordered. "Full emergency status. Tell them we have contact with an unknown species, armed and hostile. Sir, should we try to communicate with them?" Vexai looked at the screen again, studying those dark ships. Each one was easily twice the size of his own vessel, and his ship was considered large by Federation standards. Worse, he could see weapon ports covering every surface. These ships weren't built for exploration or trade. They were built to destroy other ships. "No," he said quietly. "We leave now, sir. You heard me? Maximum speed. Get us out of here." The Harmony's Edge turned and fled, its engines pushing as hard as they could. Behind them, the human fleet didn't move. It just waited, like predators watching prey run away. Within hours, news of the strange encounter had reached every major world in the Federation. Emergency meetings were called on dozens of planets. Military commanders who hadn't seen real action in centuries were pulled from retirement. Scientists worked around the clock to figure out where these humans had come from. The answer came from a forgotten survey report filed 30 years earlier. A Federation scout ship had briefly visited a system called Sol, finding a small blue and green world orbiting a yellow star. The report had labeled it as uninhabitable due to extreme conditions: high gravity, violent weather, unstable geology, and dangerous radiation levels. No civilized species could survive there, so the system was marked as empty and forgotten. The report had been wrong. Dr. Kalayish, the Federation's top xenobiologist, studied the old survey data with growing horror. "This world they call Earth," she told the Emergency Council. It's what we classify as a Class 12 death world.
Oh.
The gravity is 3 times stronger than most of our home planets. The atmosphere has poisonous gases that would kill most of us in minutes. The weather includes storms that can level cities. The ground moves and shakes without warning. But something lives there, asked Counselor Telwan. Not just lives, thrives. The energy readings from their ships suggest they've learned to control nuclear forces we consider too dangerous to touch. Their engines burn hotter than small stars and those weapons. Dr. Kalash's voice trailed. Off as she studied the tactical data, the human ships carried devices that could throw solid objects at incredible speeds, and other weapons that seemed to create miniature suns. What kind of species develops such things? Wondered Admiral Cathera. The Federation's top military officer. The kind that has to fight to survive every day of their lives, Dr. Kalash replied. Think about it. They evolved on a world trying to kill them constantly. High gravity made them strong. Dangerous weather taught them to build tough shelters. Poisonous air forced them to develop technology just to breathe safely. They didn't develop space travel to explore the stars. They developed it to escape their nightmare world. Council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Federation had built their civilization on worlds where life was easy. Their greatest challenges were philosophical debates and resource distribution. These humans came from a place where weakness meant death. They said someone took their people, Counselor Telwan noted. What did they mean? Admiral Kethera checked her files and found the answer. 3 months earlier, a Federation rescue ship had visited the outer colonies of the Sol system. They had found primitive settlements on harsh worlds, with creatures living in dangerous conditions. Following standard procedure, they had relocated 400 of these beings to safer Federation worlds for cultural integration and protection. We saved them, the Admiral said weakly. We kidnapped them, Dr. Kalash corrected. From the human perspective, we stole their people, but we were helping them. We were helping them by our standards. But these humans don't think like us. They choose to live on deadly worlds. They choose danger over safety. When we rescued their people, we weren't saving them. We were taking them from their families. The truth was becoming clear, and it was terrifying. The Federation had accidentally committed an act of war against a species that actually knew how to fight wars. What do we do? Asked Counselor Tell. Admiral Cathera studied the reports from Commander Vexai's encounter. Human fleet had made no aggressive moves yet. They were waiting, but their message had been clear. They wanted their people back. We could return them, she suggested. Avoid conflict entirely. Possible, replied Counselor Nimali from the inner worlds. If word spreads that the Federation backs down to threats, our authority will collapse. Every member world will think they can ignore our laws. Then what? Admiral Cathera looked at the tactical displays showing human ship positions. They had spread throughout the outer system in what was clearly a battle formation. These creatures knew how to position their forces for maximum effect. We prepare for war, she said quietly, against an enemy that evolved in hell itself. News of the human arrival spread across Federation space. A chill settled over civilized worlds. For the first time in over 1,000 years, the galaxy faced the possibility of real war. And their opponents were creatures forged by evolutions, cruelest lessons, shaped by a world that had taught them that only the strong survive. The peaceful age of the Federation was about to end. Ambassador Telwyn prepared for the most important meeting of her life. She had spent 50 years making peace between different species. Her record was perfect. 17 first contacts, 17 peaceful agreements. Her ship painted pure, white with symbols of friendship covering its hull. It moved slowly toward the human fleet. She carried gifts chosen by the Federation's best cultural experts. Crystal flowers that sang beautiful songs when touched by light. Poems written in mathematical language that any intelligent species could understand. Food samples from the most peaceful worlds in the galaxy. These gifts had never failed to start friendly relations before. The human ship that received her was called the UES Defiant. It was ugly compared to Federation vessels, where her ship had smooth curves and artistic details. This one was all sharp angles and thick armor, weapon ports. covered every surface like the eyes of some giant spider. Just looking at it made Telwyn's skin shift to nervous purple colors. Captain Jake. Morrison met her in a room that felt more like a military bunker than a diplomatic meeting place. The walls were gray metal. The furniture was simple and functional. There were no decorations except for a flag showing a blue and green world under alien stars. Everything about the room spoke of a people who valued strength over beauty. Morrison himself was even more frightening in person than on the communication screen. He was tall, much taller than any Federation species Telwyn knew. His body was covered in muscle that moved under his skin like steel cables. His face was hard and scarred, with small eyes that seemed to see everything. Most disturbing of all, he showed no emotion. Federation beings always displayed their feelings through color changes, tentacle movements, or fin positions. This human's face was like a stone mask. "Welcome, Captain Morrison," Telwyn began, following the ancient protocols. "I bring greetings from the Galactic Federation and gifts to celebrate this historic meeting between our peoples." She placed the crystal flowers on the table. They immediately began their song, filling the room with beautiful music. Morrison looked at them for exactly 3 seconds, then looked back at her. "I also carry poems of friendship written in the universal language of mathematics," Telwyn continued. "These verses speak of peace, cooperation, and the joy of meeting new friends." Among the stars, Morrison said nothing. He just watched her with those cold, unblinking eyes. And finally, Telwyn said, beginning to feel nervous, "I offer foods from our most peaceful worlds. It's prepared according to ancient recipes that have brought joy to countless species." She finished her presentation and waited for Morrison's response. According to protocol, he should now offer his own gifts and speak words of friendship. Instead, he leaned back in his chair and spoke in a voice like grinding stone. "Lady, I appreciate the flowers, but we're not here for a tea party." Telwyn's translator struggled with the unfamiliar words. Tea party? What was a tea party?
Morrison
continued without waiting for her response. 3 months ago, someone took 400 people from our outer settlements. Our tracking led us here. We want them back. Took. Telwyn's skin shifted to confused yellow patterns. "I'm afraid I don't understand." "The Federation practices voluntary integration for primitive species who need our protection." Morrison's eyes grew colder, if that was possible. Primitive. Telwyn realized she had made a mistake, but she didn't understand what it was. In Federation terms, any species that lived on dangerous worlds and used violent technology was primitive by definition. It wasn't an insult, just a fact. "Perhaps I used the wrong word," she said quickly. "I meant to say developing species. Federation has a duty to help those who haven't yet learned to live in peace." "Live in peace?" Morrison's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow sounded more dangerous than shouting. "You mean surrender our freedom?" Before Telwyn could respond, the door opened and another human entered. This one was smaller than Morrison, but somehow even more frightening. It was female, Telwyn thought, though human gender differences were hard for her to understand. The woman's left arm had been replaced with some kind of mechanical device that hummed with barely controlled energy. She moved like a predator, and when she smiled, her teeth looked very sharp. "Captain," the woman said pleasantly, "the good ambassador here just called us primitive. Should I show her our primitive weapons?" Morrison nodded toward the newcomer. "Ambassador Telwyn, meet Lieutenant Colonel Amy Rodriguez, my first officer." Rodriguez sat down across from Telwyn and placed her mechanical arm on the table. Metal fingers drummed against the surface with tiny clicking sounds. "So, Ambassador, tell me about this voluntary integration program of yours." Telwyn found herself sweating, though she didn't know why. These humans weren't threatening her directly, but something about them terrified her on a level she couldn't understand. Her species had evolved on a gentle world with no predators. She had never learned to recognize the signs of creatures designed for hunting and killing. "The Federation relocates developing species for their own safety," she explained. "Like yours are too dangerous for intelligent life. We move people to better places where they can learn to live without violence." Relocates. Morrison stood up slowly, and Telwyn had to fight the urge to run. You mean kidnaps? No, Telwyn said quickly. We save them. We give them comfortable homes, good food, education, and peaceful ways of living. They're much happier after the integration process. Rodriguez leaned forward, her mechanical fingers still clicking. Integration process. What exactly does that involve? Well, first we help them forget their violent past. Memory adjustment is painless and helps them start fresh. Then we teach them proper civilization. Art, music, philosophy, cooperation. We show them how much better life can be without weapons and aggression. The silence that followed was the most frightening thing Telwyn had ever experienced. Morrison and Rodriguez looked at each other, and some kind of communication passed between them without words. When Morrison looked back at her, his face had changed. The cold control was still there, but now she could see something burning behind his eyes. You erased their memories, he said quietly. We help them forget painful experiences, Telwyn corrected. The violent conditioning that their harsh world forced on them. Rodriguez's mechanical arms stopped clicking. You tried to make them forget who they were. We help them become better people. Morrison walked around the table until he stood directly behind Telwyn's chair. She could feel the heat from his body and smell the strange scent of human skin. Every instinct told her to run, but her legs wouldn't move. Those people you took, Morrison said, his voice barely above a whisper, were my people, farmers, engineers, mothers and fathers trying to build new homes for their children. You stole them from their families and tried to turn them into something else. We saved them from a life of violence and hardship, Telwyn insisted. Though her voice was shaking now, Rodriguez slammed her mechanical fist on the table, leaving a dent in the reinforced metal. The sound echoed through the room like a gunshot. Let me translate for you, Ambassador. You kidnapped our people. You're calling it rescue? We're calling it an act of war. Telwyn's skin flashed through every color of terror her species could produce. War? But the Federation doesn't fight wars. We are a peaceful civilization. So were we, Morrison said, moving back to his seat. Until someone stole our children. But surely we can reach an agreement, Telwyn pleaded. The Federation can offer you so much. Advanced technology, membership in our community, access to thousands of peaceful worlds. We don't want your technology, Rodriguez said. You don't want your membership? We want our people back. Morrison leaned forward, and Telwyn saw something in his eyes that no Federation diplomat had ever witnessed. It was the look of a predator that had found its prey. You have 24 hours, he said simply. Return every human you took, alive and unharmed. If even one of them has been hurt by your integration process, we will consider it murder. If we refuse, Telwyn whispered. Morrison's smile was the most terrifying thing she had ever seen. It showed no warmth, no humor, only the promise of violence. Then you'll learn why evolution made us the way we are. Telwyn fled from the human ship as fast as her vessel could carry her. As soon as she was clear, she sent an emergency message to Federation Command. Her report was barely coherent, filled with descriptions of creatures who showed no fear, no respect for diplomatic protocol, and no interest in peaceful solutions. The humans, she warned, were not just another species to be negotiated with. They were something the peaceful galaxy had never encountered before, a people who actually meant their threats, who saw violence not as a last resort but as a tool to be used when necessary. Most frightening of all, they seemed to think that taking their people was worth fighting a war over. The Federation had never met a species that valued individual lives more than political stability. As Telwyn's ship raced toward Federation space, the human fleet continued to wait with the patience of apex predators. They had delivered their ultimatum. Now they would see if diplomacy could solve this problem. But everyone who met them came away with the same feeling. These humans were hoping diplomacy would fail. The Federation High Command building rose like a crystal mountain from the center of Harmony Prime, the most peaceful world in known space. For 3,000 years, this place had been the heart of galactic civilization. Wars were planned here, though real wars hadn't happened in centuries. Trade agreements were signed, disputes were settled, and and peace was maintained across hundreds of worlds today. The Great Council chamber filled with beings from across the galaxy, all united by fear of creatures they barely understood, Admiral. Cathara stood at the center of the room, her forearms moving gracefully as she presented the tactical data. She was old even by her species standards, one of the few military officers who remembered when the Federation actually fought battles, instead of just threatening economic sanctions. The human fleet consists of 47 ships, she reported, her voice steady despite the fear that gripped everyone present. Each vessel is approximately twice the size of our heavy cruisers, but their design philosophy is completely different from ours. The holographic display showed images of human ships next to Federation vessels. The contrast was shocking. Federation ships were works of art, smooth curves and graceful lines designed to inspire awe and demonstrate the advanced culture of their builders. The human ships looked like weapons themselves, all angles and armor and threatening projections. Their hulls are 3 times thicker than ours, Admiral Cathara continued. It's not just thicker, but made from materials we've never seen before, some kind of metal composite that seems designed specifically to resist energy weapons. Counselor Verneth of the Inner Worlds shifted nervously on his floating platform. His species had evolved from creatures that ate flowers and sang to attract mates. The concept of building ships specifically to destroy other ships was alien. To him, surely their numbers are too small to pose a real threat, he asked hopefully. We have over 10,000 ships in the Federation fleet. Admiral Cathara's response crushed that hope immediately. Our computer simulations are... troubling. Federation vessels are designed for patrol duties, ceremonial functions, and showing our flag to primitive worlds. These human ships appear to be designed for one purpose only: killing other ships as efficiently as possible. Chief Science Officer Limtara stepped forward, her tentacles quivering with barely controlled terror. She had spent her entire life studying peaceful applications of technology. The human ships violated everything she thought she knew about intelligent species. Their weapons are beyond our understanding, she reported. They use controlled nuclear fusion in their engines, channeling radiation levels that would kill most. Federation crews within minutes. Their main weapons appear to be kinetic projectiles accelerated to 17% of light speed. The chamber fell silent. Most Federation species had abandoned kinetic weapons thousands of years ago as too primitive and destructive. They preferred elegant energy beams that could disable ships without causing permanent damage. 17% of light speed, whispered Counselor Damali. But the impact force would be equivalent to small asteroids, Limtara confirmed. A single hit from one of their projectiles would completely destroy any Federation ship ever built. What about their other weapons? Asked General Huckstar. The Federation's top military strategist, Limtara's color shifted to deep purple. The shade her species displayed when confronting something terrifying. They appear to have devices that create controlled fusion explosions. Miniature stars, essentially that they can direct at enemy targets. The implications sank in slowly. The Federation had built their military doctrine around the assumption that all intelligent species shared their preference for non-lethal solutions. Their ships carried neural disruptors that could knock out enemy crews without permanent harm. They had electromagnetic pulse generators that could disable enemy systems without destroying them. Everything was designed to win battles without actually killing anyone. The humans had built weapons designed to kill everything they touched. There must be a peaceful solution, insisted Counselor Nemoli, her voice desperate. What if we offer them full Federation membership? Complete technological exchange, access to our trade networks, citizenship on any world they choose.
Admiral.
Cathara had read Ambassador Telwyn's report 3 times. The human captain's words still echoed in her mind. We don't want your technology. We don't want your membership. We want our people back. No, they're not interested in joining us, she said quietly. They only want one thing: the return of the humans we relocated to Paradise Station. The silence that followed was deafening. In the chamber knew about Paradise Station, though few liked to discuss it. It was the Federation's most advanced cultural integration facility, where primitive species were taught to abandon their violent ways and embrace Federation values. Dr. Yethmer, station's chief administrator, had arrived on the fastest ship available. The species looked like giant flowers with eyes, beautiful and delicate. He'd spent his career helping violent species learn to live in peace. The human subjects have been responding well to treatment, he reported nervously. We've successfully suppressed most of their aggressive tendencies and violent memories. Several have already begun expressing interest in Federation art and philosophy. Treatment. Admiral Cathara's voice was sharp. What exactly does that? Involves standard integration procedures, Dr. Yethmer replied. Memory adjustment to remove traumatic experiences, neural conditioning to reduce violent impulses, cultural education to replace primitive beliefs with civilized values. It's all completely painless and approved by the Federation Ethics Committee. Huckstar leaned forward on his platform. Species had once been warriors, though that was thousands of years ago. Something about the human ships reminded him of old stories his grandfather used to tell. Doctor, how many of the human subjects have completed the integration process? 38 have graduated to full Federation citizenship, Dr. Yethmer said proudly. They're now living peacefully on various member worlds, contributing to society in non-violent ways. And the others? Still in treatment? Some species take longer to adapt than others. The humans seem particularly resistant to memory adjustment. Their brains have unusual structures that make standard techniques less effective. Admiral Cathara felt a chill run through her body. Doctor, when you say graduated to full Federation citizenship, what happened to their original personalities? Naturally, they had to forget their primitive past. The violent conditioning, the attachment to their harsh homeworld, the tribalistic loyalty to family groups. All of that was replaced with proper Federation values. You erased who they were, Admiral Cathara said quietly. We helped them become better people, Dr. Yethmer corrected. The humans we rescued were suffering under terrible conditions. Constant danger, violent conflicts, primitive technology. Now they're safe, peaceful, and happy. General Huckstar's old warrior instincts were awakening. Doctor, if one of your own people was taken from their home and forced to forget their family, their culture, their entire identity, how would you feel? But that's different. My people are already civilized. Are you sure the humans see it that way? The debate that followed revealed the fundamental problem facing the Federation. Their entire civilization was built on the belief that their way of life was superior to all others. They had spent millennia rescuing primitive species from violent worlds, teaching them to live in peace, helping them become proper Federation citizens. None of them had ever considered that some species might not want to be rescued. We could return the remaining subjects, suggested Counselor Telwan. Avoid conflict entirely. Possible, replied Counselor Raneth firmly. If word spreads that the Federation backs down to threats, our authority will collapse. Every member world will think they can ignore our laws. Primitive species will refuse integration. Pirates will demand we negotiate instead of enforcing justice. But the alternative is war with a species that actually knows how to fight wars, Admiral Cathara pointed out. So we fight them, General Huckstar said grimly. We assemble the largest fleet in Federation history. We show them that civilized society cannot be threatened by barbarians, no matter how well armed they are. The vote was closer than anyone expected, but the decision was made. The Federation would respond with overwhelming force to preserve their authority and their way of life. They would assemble 300 ships, 10 times the size of the human fleet, and end this threat once and for all. Admiral Cathara accepted command of the operation with a heavy heart. She had read the reports about human evolution, about the death world they called Earth. These creatures had been shaped by millions of years of survival on a planet. Izzat tried to kill them every day. They had learned to fight not because they were evil, but because their world had given them no choice. How long do we have? She asked. The humans gave us 24 hours, reported her aide. That was 18 hours ago. Admiral Cathara looked at the tactical displays showing human ship positions. They had spread throughout the outer system in a perfect battle formation, waiting with the patience of apex predators. These weren't the random positions of an exploration fleet or the ceremonial arrangement of a diplomatic mission. 300 Federation ships moved through space like a white river of light. Never before in galactic history had such a massive fleet been assembled. Ships from every corner of Federation space had answered the call, their hulls gleaming. In the starlight, ceremonial banners streaming from their communication arrays, Admiral Cathara stood on the bridge of her flagship. The eternal peace, watching the human fleet grow larger on her screens. 47 ships against 300. The numbers should have been comforting, but something about those dark, angular vessels filled her with dread. The human ships hadn't moved in 18 hours. They waited in perfect formation, spread across the system like pieces on a game board. There was no panic, no desperate positioning, no signs of fear. They simply waited, patient as death itself. Admiral reported her tactical officer. The human fleet is powering up their weapons. On the main screen, the human ships began to glow with internal light. Energy readings spiked beyond anything the Federation had ever recorded. These weren't the gentle energy signatures of Federation vessels. These were the power levels of barely controlled stars. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, his scarred face calm as he watched the Federation Armada approach. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency. No shouting. No excitement, just the focused preparation of professionals who knew their job. "Captain," reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Ben Cooper. "Federation fleet is in weapons range." Morrison nodded slowly, signaled the fleet. "Remember why we're here?" Across the human formation, 46 other captains received the same message. In the engine rooms, human engineers made final adjustments to reactors burning at temperatures that would melt Federation ships. In the weapon bays, human gunners checked targeting systems, designed to track objects moving at significant fractions of light speed. These weren't the elegant ceremonies of Federation warfare. This was the cold, practical preparation of a species that had learned to kill or be killed. "All ships report ready, sir," announced Colonel Amy Rodriguez from her position at the weapons console. Her mechanical arm hummed with energy as she interfaced directly with the ship's targeting computers. Morrison opened a channel to the Federation fleet. "Admiral Cathara, this is Captain Morrison. You have 30 seconds to withdraw. After that, we consider any approach an act of war." Admiral Cathara received the message with a mixture of fear and anger. These humans showed no respect for the overwhelming force arrayed against them, as any civilized species would have surrendered immediately when faced with such hopeless odds. "Captain Morrison," she replied, "you are outnumbered 7-1. Surrender now, and we will treat your crews with mercy." Morrison's response was immediate and chilling. "We don't surrender, and we don't show mercy to anyone who steals our people." The communication ended, leaving the Federation fleet in shocked silence. These humans were actually planning to fight, a battle they couldn't possibly win. Admiral Cathara had no choice. The authority of the Federation was at stake. If word spread that barbarians could threaten civilized worlds without consequences, the peace that had lasted 3 millennia would collapse. "All ships," she broadcast, "begin the attack. Use minimum force. Disable their engines and weapons. Systems, try to take prisoners for questioning." The Federation fleet opened fire with their most advanced weapons. Neural disruptors designed to knock out enemy crews without damaging ships. Electromagnetic pulse generators meant to disable electronics without destroying them. Ion cannons that could drain power systems safely. This was the most sophisticated, non-lethal assault in galactic history. The human ships absorbed the attack. Without even slowing down, "Admiral," reported her weapons officer, voice shaking with disbelief, "our weapons are having no effect. Their hulls appear to be lined with some form of radiation shielding. The neural disruptors can't penetrate. Electromagnetic pulses are being absorbed. The ion cannons aren't even registering hits." Admiral Cathara felt her confidence crumble. Federation weapons had never failed before. Every species in the galaxy used similar technology, vulnerable to the same elegant solutions. These humans had built their ships to resist everything the civilized galaxy could throw at them. Morrison's response was immediate and devastating. "All ships," he broadcast to the human fleet weapons free. Target their largest vessels first. 47 human ships fired as one. Kinetic projectiles screamed across space at 17% of light speed, too fast for Federation sensors to track properly. Behind the solid rounds came fusion warheads, miniature suns that burned brighter than the system's star. The Federation's forward line simply disappeared. Ships that had patrolled space for centuries, vessels that had never seen real combat, came apart like paper toys. Their elegant hulls, designed for beauty rather than survival, offered no protection against weapons built by creatures who understood that war meant killing the enemy as efficiently as possible. Evasive maneuvers. Admiral Cathara screamed. But her ships were too large, too slow, and too fragile for real combat. They had been built for show, not for battle. The humans moved through the Federation formation like wolves hunting sheep. Their ships were smaller and faster, able to accelerate at rates that would have killed any Federation crew. But humans had evolved under 3 times normal gravity. What would crush other species was merely uncomfortable for them. Colonel Rodriguez led a squadron of destroyers through the Federation's rear guard, her weapons speaking with mechanical precision. Each shot was carefully aimed, each target selected for maximum tactical impact. There was no waste, no hesitation, no mercy. Target their command ships, Morrison ordered across the fleet network. Cut off the head and the body dies. Lieutenant. Commander Cooper highlighted priority targets on the tactical display. Sir, I'm reading massive power signatures from their flagship. They might have weapons we haven't seen yet. Then we'd better not give them a chance to use them, Morrison replied. The eternal peace became the focus of concentrated human firepower. 12 ships converged on Admiral Cathara's position, her weapons hammering her shields with the fury of artificial stars. The flagship was the largest vessel in Federation history, a symbol of their power and authority. It lasted exactly for minutes against coordinated human attack, as her ship shuddered under the assault. Admiral Cathara finally understood what they were facing. These weren't just aliens with better weapons. They were apex predators, creatures evolved on a world that had taught them to hunt, to kill, to survive at any cost. Her communications officer was screaming reports of ship after ship being destroyed. The Federation fleet, the largest military force in galactic history, was being torn apart by fewer than 50 human vessels. Admiral, we're reading massive hull breaches on decks 7 through 15. Main power is failing. Weapons are offline. Admiral Cathara looked at her tactical display and saw the truth. The human fleet was methodically destroying every Federation ship, starting with the largest and working their way down. They showed no interest in accepting surrender, took no prisoners. They simply killed everything that threatened them. Send a message to all Federation forces, she ordered as her ship began to break apart around her. Fall back. Retreat. Immediately. We're not fighting soldiers. We're fighting Deathworlders. But it was too late for most of her fleet. The humans had planned this battle perfectly, positioning their ships to cut off escape routes before the fighting even began. They had studied Federation tactics, identified weaknesses, and prepared counters for every possible move. Captain Morrison watched the slaughter from his bridge with cold satisfaction. This wasn't about glory or conquest. This was about sending a message to the galaxy. Humanity's children were not to be touched. Sir, reported Cooper, Federation flagship is breaking up, reading multiple explosions across their hull. Any survivors? Some escape pods, sir? Orders? Morrison considered for a moment. His orders from Earth Command were clear. Rescue the colonists and eliminate any threat to human settlements. These Federation forces had chosen to fight rather than return stolen people. Let them go, he said finally. Someone needs to spread the word about what happens when you take our people. The battle lasted for hours. When it ended, the Federation's Grand Armada was nothing but debris drifting in the void. 300 ships, the pride of Galactic. Civilization has been reduced to scrap metal by a force 1/7 their size. The human fleet regrouped in perfect formation, their hulls scarred but intact. They had lost 2 ships and suffered minor damage to 6 others. In return, they had destroyed the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen. Morrison opened a channel to the few surviving Federation vessels. "This is Captain Morrison. We're proceeding to Paradise Station to recover our people. Any attempt to interfere will be met with the same response." Admiral Cathara, floating in an escape pod among the wreckage of her fleet, listened to the message with numb horror. The humans weren't finished. They were going to rescue their stolen people, and nothing the Federation could do would stop them. As the human fleet moved deeper into Federation space, word of their victory began to spread. Across hundreds of worlds, civilized species learned that the age of Federation dominance was over. Paradise Station hung in space like a giant crystal flower, its transparent walls and graceful curves designed to inspire peace and wonder. For 50 years, it had been the Federation's crown jewel, a place where primitive species learned to abandon violence and embrace civilization. Beautiful gardens filled with alien flowers covered every level. Soft music played in the corridors. The air itself was designed to calm aggressive impulses. Today, human Marines moved through those corridors like avenging angels. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the station's main observation deck, watching his soldiers escort freed colonists to transport ships. The contrast was sharp. The station was all curves and soft colors, built to make visitors feel peaceful and safe. The humans were angular and hard, their armor scarred from countless battles, their weapons ready for immediate use. Colonel Amy Rodriguez approached. Her mechanical arm worried softly as she consulted a data pad. Her expression was grim, which Morrison knew meant bad news. "Final count, sir," she reported. 412 colonists recovered alive. 38 didn't make it through the integration process. Morrison's jaw tightened. The Federation's idea of cultural integration had killed 38 human beings. Men and women who had traveled across the galaxy to build new homes only. To die slowly in alien laboratories as doctors tried to erase their humanity. "How?" he asked quietly. "Memory suppression went too far," Rodriguez explained. "The Federation doctors tried to remove all traces of human culture, human emotions, human identity. Some of our people's minds just couldn't handle having everything that made them human stripped away." Dr. Sarah Kim, the expedition's chief medical officer, was working around the clock to treat the survivors. She had set up a field hospital in the station's main cargo bay using human medical equipment brought from the fleet. The Federation's medical facilities were designed for their own species and useless for treating humans. Captain Dr. Kim called out as she saw Morrison approaching. "You need to see this." She led him to a bed where a young woman lay staring at the ceiling with empty eyes. Morrison recognized her from the colonial records. Lisa Grant, age 24, an agricultural engineer who had volunteered to help establish farming systems on New Texas. "Lisa," Dr. Kim said gently. "Can you tell the captain your name, Lisa?" Turned toward Morrison, but her eyes were unfocused, confused. I think it was Lisa, or maybe that's wrong. The doctors said my old name was Primitive. They gave me a new one, but I can't remember it either." Morrison knelt beside her bed. "Lisa Grant, you're from Ohio. On Earth, you studied agricultural engineering at State University. You volunteered for the New Texas colony because you wanted to help people grow food on frontier worlds." Lisa's eyes filled with tears. "I remember some of that, like looking at old pictures. But it feels like someone else's life. As the doctor said my old life was full of violence and pain, that I was happier without those memories." "What do you remember about your family?" "Family?" Lisa looked confused. "The doctors said family bonds were primitive tribal behavior. They said Federation citizens only needed loyalty to the greater good." Dr. Kim guided Morrison away from the bed. "It's the same with most of them, Captain. The Federation doctors didn't just erase traumatic memories. They tried to erase everything that made them human. Family connections, personal goals, individual identity, even basic emotions like love and anger." Morrison looked around the medical bay at dozens of survivors. In similar conditions, these weren't the strong, independent colonists who had left Earth to build new worlds. They were broken shells of human beings, their personalities shattered by months of psychological torture disguised as medical treatment. "Some of them don't even remember their own children," Dr. Kim continued. "Parents who can't recognize their own families. Children who were taught that missing their mothers and fathers was a mental illness that needed to be cured. A commotion near the transport ships caught Morrison's attention. He saw a group of colonists being led aboard by Marine escorts, but some of them were resisting. "I don't want to go," one man was saying to Sergeant Rick Davis, a veteran Marine. "With cybernetic legs, this place is safe. Earth is violent and dangerous. The doctors explained everything to me." Sergeant Davis looked helplessly at Morrison as the captain approached. "Sir, about 20 of them are refusing to leave. Say they're happy here and don't want to return to their old violent lives." Morrison studied the man who had spoken. According to the records, this was Tom Wilson, a mining engineer who had brought his wife and 2 children to the new Texas colony. The man standing before him showed no recognition of his own name when Morrison spoke it. "Tom, your wife Susan is looking for you. Your children Mike and Jenny are asking where their daddy is." Tom's face remained blank. "I don't understand those words. Wife? Children?" The doctors said those were primitive concepts that cause suffering. "I'm much happier now that I don't have to worry about tribal bonds." Morrison felt something cold and dangerous growing in his chest. The Federation hadn't just kidnapped these people. They had murdered their personalities and replaced them with artificial ones designed to be perfect Federation citizens. Colonel Rodriguez joined the group, her mechanical fingers drumming against her armor in the pattern Morrison recognized as barely controlled rage. "Sir, we've got a problem," she said. "The Federation doctors responsible for the integration program are still on the station. They're in the medical section, trying to destroy their research data." "Are they now?" Morrison's voice was deadly quiet. "Should we arrest them for questioning?" Morrison looked around at the broken humans being loaded onto transport ships. Children who couldn't remember their parents. Parents who didn't understand why strangers claimed to be their family. Adults reduced to the mental state of confused. Children by doctors who thought they were helping. "No," he said finally. "Bring them to me. I want to meet the people responsible for this." An hour later, Dr. Yeathmer and his medical staff were escorted to the observation deck under heavy guard. The Federation doctor looked like a giant flower with eyes, beautiful and delicate. He had spent his career helping violent species learn to live in peace, and he was proud of his work. "Captain Morrison," Dr. Yeathmer said in his melodious voice, "I must protest this violent seizure of a medical facility. We are healers, not soldiers." Morrison stood with his back to the doctor, looking out at the transport ships carrying the survivors, healers. "Yes, of course. We've dedicated our lives to curing violence and aggression in primitive species. The humans we treated here were suffering from severe psychological disorders caused by their harsh environment. We helped them find peace." Morrison turned around slowly. Dr. Yeathmer had never seen a human face before, and Morrison's expression terrified him on a level he couldn't understand. The captain's eyes held something the gentle doctor had never encountered. The cold fury of a predator whose young had been threatened. "You call erasing someone's personality healing?" "We removed harmful conditioning," Dr. Yeathmer insisted. "The attachment to family groups, the aggressive responses to threat, the primitive emotions that cause so much suffering. We replaced them with proper Federation values. We turned parents into strangers to their own children. We freed them from the burden of primitive tribal bonds." Morrison stepped closer, and Dr. Yeathmer instinctively backed away. Something about the human's presence triggered every prey instinct his peaceful species had evolved.
Morrison
said quietly, "Let me explain something about humans. We don't see family as a burden. We see it as the most important thing in existence. We'll cross the galaxy for our families. We'll fight wars for them. We'll die for them. But such attachments cause violence and conflict," Dr. Yeathmer protested. "Yes, they do. And that's exactly why no one should ever threaten our families." Morrison gestured toward the transport ships. "Those broken people out there were someone's children, someone's parents, someone's loved ones. You stole them from their families and tried to erase everything that made them human. We were helping them become civilized." Morrison's smile was the most terrifying thing Dr. Yeathmer had ever seen. "Doctor, you just learned something important about humans. We're only civilized as long as you don't threaten our family. Cross that line, and you discover what we really are." "What's that?" Morrison looked out at the human fleet floating in space around the station, 45 ships crewed by the descendants of Earth's apex predators. Behind them, hundreds of Federation ships drifted as wreckage, destroyed by creatures the peaceful galaxy had never imagined could exist. The thing your nightmares are made of. Dr. Yethmer and his staff were loaded onto the last transport ship, along with all their research data. They would be taken back to Earth to face trial for crimes against humanity. The Federation had laws about the treatment of primitive species. But humans had different ideas about justice. As the human fleet prepared to leave Federation space, Morrison sent one final message to every world in the galaxy. It was short and simple, but it would be remembered for generations. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. We came here seeking our stolen people. We found them broken and damaged by those who claimed to be helping them. This will not happen again.